Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to some various cattle breeds, including both beef and dairy breeds, and some basic cattle terminology that you should know when moving on into any class plot past intro to ag. Okay, so starting off with some terminology. The male terms that you should know the difference between a bull and a steer. So, a bull is an intact male. That means that he still has his testicles. And then a steer is a castrated male. Okay, castrated male means that his testicles have been removed. We do that a lot in like the feedlot setting because it helps with that animal's temperament, so they're easier to work with. And it also helps with their rate of gain in the feedlot so that they can gain more weight, put on more meat. Okay. A calf can be a male or female. That's what you call a newborn. So when a female has a baby, you say she's had a calf. When looking at your female terms over here, cow is the first one, and that's what you think of when you think of cattle. You say, oh, there's some cows or whatever. And that technical term cow is actually used for a female that's had at least one calf, or she has to be older than 2 years old. Okay. Now a heifer is a female that has not had a calf. So this is a young female, under two. Typically, a heifer will have her first calf about a year and a half old, almost two. So during their first pregnancy, they're still referred to as a heifer. But once that calf is born, then they're considered a cow. So once that calf drops on the ground, they're no longer a heifer, they're now a cow because they've had a calf. Moving on, so bovine, looking at your Latin terms, bovine is a Latin term for cattle. And then this Bos taurus and Bos indicus, when you're looking at like scientific classification of cattle, all breeds are descendants of these two species. So Bos taurus is like your northern hemisphere cattle, so like your Angus, Hereford, Simmental, Gilvey, Charolais, all of your big beef breeds that you really think of. And then Bos indicus is going to be like your breeds that you find in very dry, arid, warm climates. The Brahman breed, which I'll show you a picture of, is the one that we primarily think of when we look at a Bos indicus breed. They're easy to identify because they have very long, droopy ears, and they have a long, saggy dewlap in the front. And I'll kind of point those things out when I pull the picture up. And the last couple terms you should know, a herd just refers to a group of cattle, can be male and female all together. You say, oh, that's a herd of cattle out in that pasture, would be how you would use that term. And then calving is the word that we use when a female is giving birth. So if a cow is having a baby, you say, oh, that cow is calving, or oh, that heifer is calving if she's having her first calf. Okay? Alright, so we'll start with some beef breeds, and then I'll show you some pictures of some dairy as well. So beef breeds are animals that we consume for their beef, for their meat. The first one here is Black Angus. This is the one that people typically will recognize as a beef breed. They have a solid dark black coat. That's the easiest way to identify them. And this next one here is the exact same breed, okay? It's still an Angus. The only difference is its coat color. So you have Red Angus versus Black Angus. Both are known for their very high marbling trait. So that means when you slaughter one of these animals and you eat a steak from one, the meat should have very high marbling, or a lot of intramuscular fat is what that marbling is, and that's what gives that meat the really good taste and flavor and palatability and tenderness. All right, so Angus are very well known for this trait, and they're actually the #1 produced beef breed in the United States. Okay, so there's your Black and Red Angus. Moving on, you have your Hereford. Herefords are easily identified by their 5 white points. So they have a white face. I should say 6 white points. White face, white belly, and 4 white feet. So you can see on this mama cow a little easier. The calf You can't see the bottom of its front legs there, but you see the white face, white belly, 4 white feet. And then you'll also see a white tail switch most often on these this breed as well. So white tail switch, okay? The next one is a Simmental. You're going to look at this and say, wait, but isn't that a Hereford? But you want to look closely. There's a couple differences here. So on a Simmental, you want to look at the tail switch color. So looking at this tail switch versus our Hereford's tail switch, you see the color difference. So Hereford had a white tail switch, Simmental has a red tail switch. The other difference is that the coat color, that red color, typically will come up around the eyes in a Simmental, where it doesn't in a Hereford. So you can see over here on the Hereford, primarily bald white face, whereas the Simmental have those pretty prominent red patches on their eyes. Okay. All right, next one is the Gelbvieh. These guys are really, really hardy, but their meat isn't the best quality. So we don't typically raise Gelbviehs as purebreds. Like you don't see people raising just Gelbviehs. A lot of times you'll see them in a crossbred operation. So they'll cross maybe a Gelbvieh with an Angus and then sell those babies. So they, like I said, they're really hardy, so they can survive in really cold climates. So you'll see these guys a lot. You'll see some here in Nebraska, but you'll see a lot more when you get into the Dakotas, Montana, in those colder regions where those guys really thrive. This next one's a Limousin. They look kind of like your red and black Angus. If you go back here, looking at those coat colors, but I want you to note the red Angus coat color is very identifiable because it's that deep rusty red color, whereas on your Limousin is going to have more of an orangey tint to it, and then the black color of this breed is still that kind of black color that you see on an Angus. But if you were to put these guys next to a red and black Angus, you'd notice that the Limousin were smaller in stature and a little more stubby. Okay. All right, this next one is the Charolais. So these are the big beefy dudes. Well, one of the two big beefy dudes. So these guys, they have a double muscling trait, which allows them to put on this really heavy muscling that you see here in his shoulder and his leg. So because that they put on so much muscle, it really tends to be a lean meat. So that lean meat might not be the best quality. It might not have the most marbling in it like your Angus would. So Charolais would be good to cross with an Angus. So maybe you can get a lot of pounds of meat, but it's higher quality with that marbling in there. Okay. All right, this next one is a Shorthorn. The Shorthorn, I want you to note, is the only breed of cattle that we have both a beef Shorthorn and dairy Shorthorn. So they're easily identified by this like speckled kind of flecked coat that they have going on. They can range from a kind of a bright red color to even black. So this guy's got kind of a brownish coat color, but they will all have this kind of speckling to them, okay? All right, and then we have a Texas Longhorn. So, famous in Texas. Actually, when I went to school in Oklahoma and I went to visit Texas, there were people that would literally have one Texas Longhorn just hanging out in their front yard. I don't know, they thought he was just like a little mascot or something. But they don't produce the best meat. It's very tough, lean. So primarily people just keep these guys around for show. Just kind of a cool pet to have, I guess, if you can afford to feed one. So that's your Texas Longhorn. Easily identified by their very long rack of horns here. Oh, and they can also, your Longhorn can also vary in coat color. So this guy has a wild coat color, but they can pretty much be any color you can think of in the cattle spectrum. All right, and here's your Brahman. So this is your one Bos Indicus breed that you will see here in the United States. So you can see they look pretty funky. They've got these really droopy ears, a really long dished face, This is their dewlap here in the front. It's very saggy, wrinkly. They also have this hump in between their shoulder blades. It's a fatty kind of tissue hump that actually helps in storage of water. Like I said, these guys you'll primarily find in arid, dry regions, so they can withstand drought very well. So the only place you'll really see these guys in the United States is in like Florida, is where I see them really popular. It's very, very hot down there, sticky, muggy, and these guys, they do pretty well in that region, okay? This next one, the Belgian blue. So this one is the one you'll probably see some internet pictures that are fake of these guys, but this is a real picture. So these guys also have a double muscling trait like the Charlet, but their double muscling trait is a little more prominent. So you can really see how defined their muscular structure is. Belgian blues are also easy to identify because of this kind of blue-gray patches of speckling that they have on them. That makes them easy to identify. Okay. All right, so moving on to some dairy breeds in the United States. The Holstein is number one. This is the Happy Cows come from California, the cow that's in those commercials. Also, the Chick-fil-A cow. This is a funny fact. So the Chick-fil-A cow is a Holstein, if you're familiar with what I'm talking about. And we don't typically consume dairy cattle for meat. So it's kind of funny that you have a dairy cow holding up a sign that says eat more chicken when the dairy cattle aren't usually the ones that are consumed. So anyways, it's kind of funny. But this is the largest of the dairy breeds and number one produced in the United States. Next one is Jersey. Jersey is one of the smallest dairy breeds. They're popular because they're a little more hardy. They produce milk that's high in fat, so it makes great milk for like cheese and ice cream, things like that. Here's your Brown Swiss. Brown Swiss is another popular breed that you see here in the United States. The name's a little misleading because their coat color isn't really brown to me. It's more of like a grayish color. But you'll notice on all dairy cattle, they're going to have this, well, the females, obviously, they're the only ones that you're going to get milk from. But their udders are going to be very large, much larger than what you would see on a beef cow. And you'll see these very prominent veins on those udders. Those are milk veins, okay? All right, this next breed is the Ayrshire. These guys came from Switzerland. They also make milk that's high in fat, similar to the Jersey. So good for butter, ice cream, cheese, things like that. The milking shorthorn. So remember I said the shorthorn breed itself, we have a beef breed and a dairy breed. So this is the dairy breed, the milking shorthorn. Another thing to note on dairy breeds is how prominent their hooks are. So their hooks are the top of their hip joints here, and you can really see how prominent it kind of juts out. You also will typically see the ribs more on a dairy cow than a beef cow. And no, they're not malnourished. That's just kind of their bone structure and how they're set up. So kind of difference there. Here's the Guernsey. So Guernseys are known for their golden milk. So their milk actually has like a gold yellowish tint to it. So that's kind of how to tell these guys apart from some other dairy breeds. And that is all I have. So I will go ahead and end with that.